Legal update in our defamation lawsuit against CNN. A federal judge in Georgia recently dismissed our lawsuit using flawed case law and some mental gymnastics to say that, quote, violating a policy by providing incorrect or misleading information and violating a policy by truthfully providing someone's private information is similarly damaging to the journalist's reputation. Give me a break. This judge might think there is no legal difference between mistakenly failing to blur a number on a lamppost and publishing falsehoods, but truth matters. So now we're appealing this to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. We'll take you through it. Here we go. So back in February 2021, Project Veritas was banned from Twitter for violating their policy of sharing people's private information without their consent. Now recall, this stemmed from a report we were doing on the vice president of Facebook, a guy named Guy Rosen, leaked a video to Project Veritas of what Rosen had said. While attempting to interview Rosen outside of his home in California, we inadvertently showed his address on a lamppost.
When you talk about freezing comments containing hate,
we take privacy concerns like this very seriously at Project Veritas. In fact, in the video where we were interviewing Ana Cabrera, we went over the top and blurred everything, more than what any other media or journalistic organization does. When Twitter banned Project Veritas as a result of mistakenly failing to blur a lamppost, CNN Business's Brian Fung correctly reported the facts, citing the Twitter policy, and even sought comment from a Twitter spokesperson. Days later, anchor Ana Cabrera incorrectly stated on air that we were banned for spreading misinformation, while her colleague Brian Stelter backed her up.
Of course, social media plays such a huge role here. We're starting to see companies crack down to try to stop the spread of misinformation and to hold some people who are spreading it accountable. Brian, for example, Twitter has suspended the account of Project Veritas, a conservative activist organization. At least that's how they couch themselves.
That's actually not how we couch ourselves. We've never referred to ourselves as conservative action activists. But Cabrera's claim that Veritas was banned from Twitter for spreading misinformation was unequivocally false, and she knew it. Now, just days earlier, Cabrera tweeted out the truth, which contradicted what she said on the air. The tweet read, "The decision followed what a Twitter spokesperson described to CNN as repeated violations of Twitter's policies prohibiting the sharing or threats of sharing of other people's private information without consent." In this case, it was a house number, a number on a lamppost on a public street. Now, obviously, there's a huge moral and ethical difference between inadvertently photographing a lamppost and reporting false information. As Viva Frey said, failing to blur a lamppost might make a journalist an asshole, but reporting false information makes him a liar. The media has failed to blur lampposts all the time. Even CNN has done this on multiple occasions, most notably recently with the Supreme Court justice. There's this photograph on CNN's website featuring Brett Kavanaugh's house. We have blurred it in this video. It's quite ironic. If I were to simply air what CNN aired, this very video would be banned. But CNN also did it with a private elderly woman in Florida. This is not a public figure. This is not an executive at Facebook. This is a private elderly woman in Florida. And what we're showing here in this video clip, we blurred the address, but CNN did not. So we asked CNN for a simple correction, and they refused. And that's one of the differences between an ethical news organization like Project Veritas and CNN. We own our mistakes and move quickly to correct them. CNN does not want to do that. So we sued CNN for defamation in the U.S. District Court for the District of Northern Georgia, where CNN's headquarters is located. And in this complaint we filed, we said as follows: CNN was aware of Twitter's stated reason for banning Project Veritas, had itself widely reported on this stated reason, and yet falsely and maliciously published a statement suggesting that Project Veritas was banned due to its promotion of false rather than true content. Now, CNN filed a motion to dismiss, arguing the truth is as damaging as the fiction they reported. Quote from that motion: "To the average viewer, there is no material difference between being banned for misinformation and being banned for posting prohibited information. Both acts are disgraceful." That's right. CNN says publishing someone's house number is despicable. That's rich because they've done it a few times. Federal Judge Steve Jones upheld CNN's motion to dismiss with this order, effectively dismissing our defamation lawsuit. His decision was flawed on several levels, so we filed an appeal in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Georgia. Now I'm going to go back and read a quote from this federal judge's order dismissing our lawsuit. This is pretty absurd. Quote, "While Project Veritas asserts that CNN statements implying that Project Veritas was banned from Twitter for spreading misinformation maligns its journalistic integrity," ooh, he's calling us journalists, "the pleaded truth of being accused of violating a policy aimed at protecting individuals from coming to physical harm as a result of their information being shared similarly maligns a journalist's professional reputation. While there is some difference between violating a policy by providing incorrect or misleading information and violating a policy by truthfully providing someone's private information," well, the judge is drawing a difference there, quote, "the distinction is not enough to make this statement at issue actionable, as both violations are similarly damaging to the journalist's reputation," unquote. Well, at least he's calling us journalists again. Now, obviously, that reasoning is completely flawed and even irrational. We'll get to that in a minute. But we appealed this to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Our lawyers, Harmeet Dillon and Libby Locke, some of the best in the country, make this clear. Accusing a journalist of publishing something false is substantially different, obviously, and damaging than accusing a journalist of publishing the truth, as we did. From this 11th Circuit Court of Appeals brief, quote, "Ana Cabrera told CNN's national television audience that Twitter had suspended Veritas for publishing and promoting misinformation. But in reality, Twitter had not suspended Veritas for publishing or promoting misinformation. Rather, as Cabrera and CNN had reported just 4 days earlier, Twitter had suspended Veritas for a decidedly different reason, for publishing truthful but supposedly private information. Cabrera thus accused Veritas of an act of misconduct, publishing false information when Veritas had in fact engaged in a completely different act by publishing truthful but supposedly private information. Under a straightforward application of settled law, Cabrera's statement was thus not substantially true, and the district court erred in holding otherwise." That's from page 23 to 24 of this appellate brief that we filed just a few weeks ago in June of 2022. Now, on the next page of this appellate brief, we make another argument. Quote, "The district court's opinion makes clear that in holding Cabrera's defamatory statement substantially true, it is fundamentally misconstrued the substantial truth inquiry." That's one of the inquiries that one has to do in deciding defamation law. Rather than comparing the gist or substance of Cabrera's statement of the true facts, the district court compared the magnitude of harm that it believed Veritas suffered from Cabrera's defamatory statement to the magnitude of harm it believed Veritas would have suffered if Cabrera had instead reported the truth. Now, there's that harm word again. We've heard this word before. That was from the sentence from the judge's order granting motion to dismiss that we would potentially expose a person to harm by accidentally photographing a lamppost where they live. Again, very ironic because CNN tends to do that all the time. Now, when he was appointed an appellate judge, Neil Gorsuch had criticized the approach this district court has taken. He states this approach, quote, "asks courts to compare harms flowing from statements on radically different matters that may even be incommensurate, which is worse, a perjurer or an insider trader, a liar or a cheat. By contrast, the material falsehood analysis focuses judicial attention on the comparatively narrow question, whether the particular challenge statement is true or false on its own terms, a task that falls well within the traditional if human and imperfect, truth-seeking function of juries and judges. That was from a case called Bustos, which the now Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch ruled on when he was an appellate judge. And as I noted in American Muckraker, also quoting Neil Gorsuch, quote, Neil Gorsuch noted in a recent criticism of New York Times versus Sullivan that the published falsehoods in media are on a scale so great, quote, it has come to leave far more Americans defamed without redress than anyone could have predicted. And this is a great example of that. From our appellate brief, in so holding, the district court adopted a comparative harm test for substantial truth that the law emphatically rejects. The substantial truth doctrine is not concerned with harm. It is concerned with an essential element of the plaintiff's claim and dismisses the action if that element cannot be met. The substantial truth doctrine is concerned with truth, regardless of harm. That's from a case called Jewel v. NYP Holdings Incorporated. Look, this is simple. CNN lied. They lied on the air. Cabrera contradicted herself. Only one of her statements could be true. And the judge said the truth didn't really matter. Quote, Project Veritas's allegations and arguments do not plausibly suggest that the truth would have a different effect on the mind of the average reader. That doesn't make any sense. Just use common sense in addition to the law. On the bright side, the judge did call us journalists, not once, but twice. And this is just the latest federal judge to do that, to call us journalists. State judges, too. Hell, even the FBI called us news media, albeit they did so in a private, restricted document, and they contradicted the U.S. attorneys in the case that we're involved in with the FBI. And if you're wondering why all of this isn't on our Wikipedia page, well, Wikipedia says court records, even court orders, are not, quote, reliable sources. Again, you can't make this shit up. Project Veritas's Twitter account was banned for publishing something that was indeed true. So the question at this point in the lawsuit is, do words have meaning? I mean, CNN could have simply corrected this mistake, reported the truth, and called it a day. Considering CNN still hasn't corrected their doxing of a Supreme Court justice and an elderly woman in Florida, we're not holding our breath. CNN used to publish their guidelines on journalistic integrity online for the world to see. They lauded the importance of being fair and honest, and the need to confirm facts before TV segments are released to the public. CNN claimed to, quote, present the whole story, fairly and completely, unquote. They stressed that, quote, integrity and accuracy are of the utmost importance to the brand, unquote. Now, these guidelines were scrubbed from its website years ago. It appears, quote, journalistic integrity is missing not only from its website, but also from its reporting. Now, I caught up with David Chalian, one of CNN's vice presidents in D.C., and asked him about this very lawsuit, about this very defamation lawsuit and its appeal, about why they're not taking the truth seriously. You don't know who I am? I sued your network, CNN, for defamation. CNN reported that we were suspended for, quote, promoting disinformation. We sued for defamation. And now we're going to appeal that. The 11th Circuit in Georgia, where CNN's located. Why are you guys so opposed to a free press? Why they're not taking their jobs as investigative reporters seriously. And he was unable to say a word. Imagine how bad it must be when presented with such damning evidence. There's literally nothing you can say that won't make it worse.